Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for joining today's webinar, Calculating Your Recognition ROI. We're super excited to share you two awesome tools that'll help you discover the value you can gain when investing in meaningful employee engagement and employee recognition efforts. I'm Morgan Cheney. I'm our head of marketing here at Blueboard. I'm joined by Holly Aganaji. She's the director of demand generation at 15Five. And if you're not familiar with 15Five, they're a leading performance management tool. Feel free to learn more about them at 15five.com. And lastly, I'm joined by Kevin Yip. He's our co-founder and COO here at Blueboard. For those of you who aren't familiar with Blueboard, we're an experiential recognition platform that lets you reward your top employees with experiences. Their choice of things like kayaking trips, class bowling classes, tickets to their favorite show, or even family vacations. And you can learn more about us at blueboard.com. So a few things we're going to cover today. The first is how engagement drives your business, and we'll talk through the metrics that you should care about. Second, we'll do a quick workshop. Holly's going to take us through an awesome calculator to help you discover the return on investment whenever you focus on engagement efforts. And then Kevin will take us through a similar calculator that specifically looks at the value that recognition can bring to the table. We'll then share a few best practices from one of our customers, Guidewire, who was able to deliver a 30x ROI when investing in a really exciting employee referrals contest. And then we'll make sure to have live Q&A at the end. So a few quick housekeeping items to go through. Right now the lines are muted. So if you have any questions, you'll see a Q&A tool at the top. Feel free to add your questions along the way. We'll make sure to have time for those at the end. Also, if you have any questions or things that are cool you want to chat through on social media, feel free to use the hashtag Recognition ROI on any of your favorite social channels. And you'll also see a few polls popping up along the way. Feel free to engage with those. It really helps us learn what you're into and helps us shape the content going forward. And lastly, if you haven't already, we just shared over the chat window two of the calculators we're going to be using, the one for employee engagement and for recognition. So be sure to grab those two before we get to those areas so that you can input your own data in along the way. All right, so getting started. The first piece is, how does engagement drive your business and which metrics should we care about? There's three main things we're going to be talking through today with the calculators. And the first one is increased productivity. There's a really exciting correlation with companies who have really great productivity and also high engagement scores. On average, those with high productivity will also see that, those with high engagement will also see their employees are on average 20% more productive. And when you think about it, engaged employees are happy, they're excited to be at work, so they're going to be more efficient and focused on their work at hand. The second is going to be reduced absenteeism. When we think about absenteeism, that's going to mean unearned PTO, so people who might be abusing their vacation or sick days. We see that when we are looking at engaged employees, on average, the companies they work for see on average reduced absenteeism by over 40%, which is great because that means more employees are excited to come to work and do great work for you. The next is reduced turnover. Here we see that on average, engaged companies see reductions in annual voluntary turnover rates by over 40%, which is huge. Because when you think about turnover, those are costs that you would ultimately have to invest into replacing those employees when they leave you. So what do increased productivity, lower absenteeism, and reduced turnover add up to? Ultimately, increased shareholder return. When thinking about engaged companies compared to their disengaged peers, they're typically outperforming them by 5x, meaning that's a lot more value for all of your friends on the trading floor. So let's take a quick poll. You'll see that show up on screen in just a second. There we go. And the poll's running. So the question will be, which engagement metrics do you value the most? You can add things like employee retention rates, maybe your overall engagement score, satisfaction rates, or absenteeism like we just chatted through. So feel free to get your questions in or your answers in. We'll let it run for about 10 more seconds. All right, 2 more seconds. We're going in the poll. Great. All right, so it looks like the winner was employee retention rate. So we just talked a lot about the value of retention. Obviously, the more people you keep, the less you have to replace, and that cost adds up over time. So very exciting to see that you're investing there as well. Wonderful. So we're actually going to go ahead and start to jump into some of the workshopping pieces. So I'm excited to have Holly join us from 15.5. She's going to start taking us through a little bit more about 15.5, just so you're familiar, and then ultimately we will go through their employee engagement calculator.
Awesome.
Take it away, Holly.
Thanks, Morgan, for having me. So just a quick note about 15.5. We are a next generation performance management platform. We have more than 1,200 fast-growing companies such as Citrix, HubSpot, Indeed, and LinkedIn who use our solution to help lead their people. They use it with objectives, weekly check-ins, one-on-ones, recognition, and forward-looking quarterly reviews. And I wanted to start out with a quote from Peter Drucker: "What gets measured gets improved." And this is one of the reasons why I created this worksheet, is because when talking about employee engagement or culture, it would feel a little soft or siloed at times. And there was a study done a couple years ago by Deloitte saying that the #1 topic on the minds of CEOs and senior HR leaders is culture and engagement. But now with tools like Culture Amp, businesses are able to measure engagement frequently. But I think the challenging part that still exists today is, how do you assess the value of your engaged employees? And it's pretty difficult to do so, right? Because it's pretty subjective. And so people have shied away from talking about this topic quantitatively, and I think leaving a lot of untapped potential from their workforce. So to start off, I wanted to share a model from Greenhouse. Their VP of People uses this model as a framework for measuring the value of your people and how culture can impact that. And it's this concept of employee lifetime value, or ELTV. And so if you're familiar with customer lifetime value, it's borrowed from that and applied to the employee life cycle. So the horizontal axis is time they stay with your company, and the vertical is the output they produce for you. So in the beginning, an employee starts out with negative output with recruiting and onboarding, and over time they reach a level where they're fully contributing until they make their decision to leave. And if you raise the bar on all 4 points through your culture and employee programs like Recognition, look at what it can potentially do for your ELTV, right? So things like better onboarding will shorten an employee's ramp time. Other things like manager coaching, employee development, and a strong culture can really lengthen the time someone stays at your company, as well as increase how high someone can go. And the worksheet aims to see that in dollars and using these 2 scenarios. So the gray is the status quo, and the green is the potential. And then the space in between is the value add. So just a quick note before we dive into the worksheet. My approach is very simplified. It's more about how to use the data and the research available today, and let's apply it to a framework. And hopefully this framework can give you some data points about how to help you understand the value of your programs. So let's go into an example scenario. We have Brand A. It's just a fictitious company. And Brand A has 500 full-time employees, 100 million in annual revenue, and 65,000 in average employee salary. So if you want to follow along, you can pull up the worksheet. But for now, we'll pull up the worksheet here, and we'll input those numbers. So at the beginning of the year, we had 500 employees. At the end of the year, let's say we hired a lot of people, we have 575. The average employee salary is 65,000. We have our company revenue of 100 million. And the number of employees that left throughout the year is 60. So if we go to step 3 of the worksheet, you'll see these 2 scenarios. The gray is your current state and the green is your potential state. And in step 2, you'll see research from Gallup that Morgan just shared on the effect that employee engagement can have on your business. And we're going to apply that to higher engagement, so the green potential state. So breaking this down a little bit. Number 1, businesses with highly engaged teams experience a 20% lift in productivity And this is evident when you see employees leading into their work, they're sharing more ideas, they're staying longer if needed, right? So if currently the average revenue per employee is $186,000 for this company, it could be $223,000 per employee, which is a pretty big jump there. Number 2, the number of unearned PTO days taken off by employees can drop by 41%. And that seems pretty straightforward. So if employees are excited about what they're doing, they'll want to be there, they'll show up. And if the current absenteeism rate is 1.2% of total working days, which is about 3 days a year, for this company, it's about $3,000 per employee in absenteeism costs and $1.6 million for this entire organization. A 41% reduction in that brings you down to $955,000. And so the last piece, which from the poll is something you all care about, which is retention. So Gallup shows that engaged teams can improve turnover by anywhere between 24 and 59%. For the simplicity of this worksheet, I took the median and did 40. And this makes sense, right? So the more engaged your team is, the less likely they will leave, right? So you can see this in numbers 4 through 7 on the worksheet here. Your current turnover rate is 11.2%. It can go down to 6.7%. So that means instead of 60 employees leaving this year, you could reduce that down to 36. And if the average cost to replace an employee is somewhere between 6 and 9 months of that employee's salary, this calculation is going to use 9 months. As a total for your organization, your cost of turnover currently is $2.9 million, but can be reduced down to $1.75 million. So if we go back to the slide deck here, we can kind of summarize this as what does this mean for Brand A? Okay, so what this means in total, a more engaged workforce has the potential to yield Brand A $21.8 million economic impact annually. And this is through a mix of increased revenue and reduced operational expenses. And how we got there is 20% increase in productivity equals $20 million. People taking less unearned time off gives you a cost savings of $663,000. As well as savings from less turnover amounts to $1.1 million. And I know $21 million seems like a lot, but when you look at it per employee, it's about a $40,000 increased value per year from each employee, which is not really beyond the realm of possibilities. And people are showing up to work, giving more ideas, and they're more engaged with what they're doing, right? And I'll actually leave you with this, so just kind of in the wild what we're seeing. So at 15.5, we're very intentional about building our product and work culture around employee growth and development, two very big factors in employee engagement. And recently, David Skok of Matrix Partners recently put out a benchmark report for SaaS companies around growth trends. And in it, we found that companies who are at a similar revenue size as 15.5 need twice the number of employees that we have. So in other words, our team is able to produce 2 times the output compared to other companies of our scale. And I don't think that that's by accident. So, you know, improving things like coaching, recognition, performance management, this can have a very big aggregate impact in your business. And I invite you to try out this worksheet, see if it helps you open up just a meaningful dialogue with your teams. So next, Kevin will be speaking about more specifically meaningful recognition can move the engagement needle for your company.
Thanks, Holly. So as Holly mentioned, employee engagement is made up of a variety of factors. And I'm super excited to share how recognition specifically contributes to increased employee engagement. Now, employees who are recognized in a meaningful way, they feel more appreciated, more motivated, and they're much more likely to stay. Now, all of these feelings and behaviors equal to a big bump in employee engagement, which, as Holly shared, has the ability to drive super exciting business impact. Gallup shares that recognition is not only impactful, but low-hanging fruit. Why? Recognition can be verbal in a minute, just saying thank you to an employee, or rolled out as a more formal program in a matter of weeks. So I'd love to take a quick minute to share how at Blueboard, we create meaningful recognition for employees. So Blueboard is the employee recognition platform for the modern workplace. And as Morgan and I stated, we focus heavily on experiential recognition and rewards. I'd love to tell you a story of how we got started because it's super personal to me. I was actually working in my first corporate job, and my co-founder, Taylor, and I shared a really similar experience. For me personally, I was put on a project, and in the beginning had a couple team members quit. I ended up working 90 to 100-hour weeks for over 2.5 months. At the end of the project, obviously physically, mentally drained, I had gained over 25 pounds, and my girlfriend at the time was on the verge of breaking up with me. And my manager came up to me and said, "Hey, Kevin, amazing job. Really wanted to thank you for your hard work. Here's a gift card." And for me, putting in all this energy, it just felt super impersonal, right? Very transactional. And then at the end of the day, it made me feel more like a commodity than a valued team member. But what Taylor and I had got to thinking was that, hey, my manager, she had really great intentions, right? She wanted me to feel appreciated. She wanted me to feel thanked. And so we thought of a better alternative. Imagine if my manager had come up to me and said, "Hey, Kevin, I know you've been really frustrated with your health. You've been working so many hours. Heard you talk about boxing the other day. I actually got you a membership to the gym around the corner." Or, "Hey, I know you and your girlfriend these past couple months must have been really hard on your relationship. You've been working so much. Why don't you take her out to a nice dinner date? Maybe a cheese and wine pairing class." Now imagine if I got recognized in that way. Same cost to my employer and to my manager, but imagine how much more personal and thoughtful that would have felt for me. And so really that was the inspiration for Blueboard, was creating a way for companies and managers to thoughtfully recognize their employees. Let's walk through another tool for calculating ROI specific to recognition and rewards. If you haven't already, click on the link we're sharing in the chat window to pull up the calculator spreadsheet. Now, please create a copy by clicking on File, then make a copy before you begin inputting your company's data. Perfect. So in Holly's example, we saw that Brand A could expect a $21.8 million yield through increased employee engagement efforts, derived from an uptick in productivity, reduced absenteeism, and lower employee turnover. Now, Deloitte shares that when recognition is executed well, it's also a big driver of employee retention, with recognition on average reducing annual voluntary turnover by 31%. Now for this exercise, we'll specifically look at the savings that meaningful recognition efforts bring as a result of more employees staying at your company. Now for this next exercise, we'll ask to keep your company's data handy for employee headcount, average employee salary, and your annual turnover rate. You'll see that the calculator is pretty straightforward, right? And we're leveraging the same data used in our last engagement model. First, start by filling out your company's total headcount, in this case, 500. Next, adjust your average employee salary. We'll keep $65,000 as the average salary. You'll see that your total recognition budget is automatically calculated. Now, SHRM shares that a best practice is to budget 1% to 2% of your total payroll for recognition. In this example, we'll keep it conservative at 1%. We've also leveraged the same Brand A average voluntary turnover rates at 11.2%. Your expected annual turnover will be automatically calculated based on your headcount in row 17. Next, we look to SHRM for the average cost to replace a full-time employee after they leave, which is estimated to be $48,750 based on the average employee salary of $65,000 in row 10. SHRM reports that the cost to replace an employee equals 75% of their annual salary, almost 9 months worth. Now this range can get even higher for senior level talent that's harder to come by. with executives costing 200% of their salary to replace. Now, these costs are made up of sourcing, recruiting fees, the loss in productivity during the time to replace them, and the time to onboard their replacement to full capacity. We've multiplied the average cost to replace employees by the estimated employees turning over to arrive at 2.73 million in row 16. Now, introduce recognition to the mix. In row 17, we see the estimated employees saved through meaningful recognition efforts, based on Deloitte's average of 31% reduction in annual voluntary turnover. In the next row, we look at how much Brand A will save by not having to replace those 17 employees, which comes out to savings of $846,300. Dividing these savings by our recognition budget of $325K, we arrive at a return on investment of 260%. Now, I know that was a lot. So to review, in calculating ROI, we're taking the estimated savings for keeping 17 employees, a result of recognition efforts positively impacting retention. And we divide those savings by our rewards investment, which comes to 2.6. That means for every dollar you invest into recognition and rewards, you'll avoid spending $2.60 in the future. Now, recognition not only influences retention, it also has positive effects on employee motivation, performance, and general company engagement. Now, let's go to a customer example of how Guidewire, a best place to work, delivered a 30x ROI on their employee referrals contest, fueled by Blueboard. Now, employee referrals are hands down the best candidates a company can get. But with just 18% of new hires coming from referrals, Guidewire needed a more memorable and sociable way to build excitement and adoption amongst their global employee base. So they used Blueboard. Guidewire ran a 5-month employee referrals contest where winners took home their choice of a Blueboard experiential reward. The first winner, shown on the screen here, Juliano, awesome guy, chose to go skydiving for the first time in Dublin. He sent us the video and we wrapped it together for Guidewire, and they sent it and shared it across their global offices. It immediately went viral, quickly fueling excitement and program adoption. Now, at the end of the 5 months, Guidewire counted a whopping 715 additional referrals, with referrals making up 25% of all hires by contest end, an uptick of 40%. Now let's walk through how these low-cost candidates earned Guidewire that 30x return. So we shared that Guidewire counted 715 referrals from the contest. What if they otherwise had sourced these candidates externally? So ERE Recruiting Intelligence shares that referrals are much more qualified than external candidates. On average, 1 in 10 referrals get a job. Based on Guidewire's count, this equates to 72 new hires for the referral batch. SHRM shares that beyond the long-term cost for replacing an employee that we discussed on the last slide, the explicit cost to source a candidate, posting on job boards, finding candidates externally, can cost $4,129 per person. At 72 candidates, the total Guidewire would have paid to source these externally would cost around $300,000. But for this program, Guidewire invested only $10,000, a small jump compared to sourcing and recruiting fees. And when we divide that reward budget by the cost that would have been spent externally, we arrive at an ROI of nearly 30x. So the benefits of meaningful recognition, right, can be measured, but they go far beyond the quantitative impact on your financials. Saving money is great, but what about the impact on your company culture, general vibe around the office, and how your employees talk about you with friends or on Glassdoor? At Blueboard, we deliver feedback surveys to every rewarded employee after they complete an experience. Not only do we gauge how they enjoyed our product and service, but also how their Blueboard reward impacted key engagement metrics. The good news, across the board, Blueboard experiential rewards, like going horseback riding, learning how to play the guitar, or blowing glass, are excellent tools for building culture and happy employees. Now on screen, we're sharing that almost 100% of rewarded employees agree that Blueboard experiences are a great tool for engagement. Experiential rewards are memorable, personalized, highly shareable, and make a lasting impact.
Great. Thanks everybody so much for your time today. We're going to do a quick recap, and then I just made a note in the chat window that we'll be taking questions. So feel free to add yours now via the Q&A tool. We'll be happy to chat with you. So just to look through what we learned today, the first is that engaged employees do really amazing things for your business, whether it's through improved productivity rates, reduced absenteeism, or benefited voluntary turnover, having less people to replace at the end of the year, or even just creating a more positive company culture. Engaged employees are very much worth investing in. Looking specifically at recognition, we see that it's a key driver for improving employee engagement. Deloitte shares that healthy and meaningful recognition can even improve engagement by up to 14 percentage points, which is huge when you think about the value that Holly shared through the engagement calculator tool. And lastly, we encourage you to play with the calculators. We reshared the links there, and you're always welcome to reach out to us if you have any questions or challenges. We'd love to see how your numbers stack up, and ultimately let these be great tools that you can use for your 2018 planning efforts to really show the true value that's coming through from your increased engagement and recognition efforts. So on that note, we'll go ahead and open up the Q&A. We're actually seeing there's still plenty of time to add any questions you have. I'd love to, we can get started just by having a little bit of conversation internally. Let's see. Perfect. And yeah, feel free to share any questions now. Oh, perfect. I see one come through. So Josh just asked, what are some of the brands that are seeing success with your programs? So happy to start. Holly, do you have any that you want to speak to specifically, or any types of companies that you're seeing really successful with 15.5?
Yeah. I gave the example of 15.5 just because I had our productivity rates and I had that the revenue rates there. Another company that has grown a lot recently using 15.5 is Textile, which is the parent company of JustFab. It's a pretty big e-commerce site. And they started using 15.5, oh gosh, maybe four years ago, because they were growing really quickly. They wanted to have a more frequent feedback system. And as they've grown through the years, they found that having that weekly check-in of, what's going well, what's not going well, asking questions around an employee's growth edge and where they'd like to grow really helped facilitate keeping their turnover rates low in their company and allowing them to grow worldwide.
Perfect.
Yeah, for Blueboard, we can talk about two companies. I think one segment of our customers uses Blueboard to reinforce their mission, vision, and values and who they are culturally, right? An example of this is GoPro, right? They make a product to help you capture experiences in the moment. And so Blueboard perfectly aligns with their culture. And so they're really able to leverage us to reward performance that aligns with their culture. A second company that has been really successfully using Blueboard is Edmunds.com, the car marketplace down in Los Angeles. And so they've recently gone through some restructuring, which impacted morale. But for them, they used Blueboard to reward long tenured employees. And so one of the things that they loved, and we talked to their COO about, was how amazing our concierge service was. Their employees were thrilled that we would help with all the scheduling and logistics of actually getting experience up and running. Because a lot of these long tenured employees, they're executives at the company, they're very busy. And so they really liked how we were able to facilitate everything from actually picking an experience to going out and having a good time.
Perfect. I'd love to ask one question just for both of you guys. So when you're thinking about your own companies, what are the engagement metrics that you guys look at internally for your own employees, either at Blueboard or at 15.5?
Yeah. We look at things like ENPS, right? So how likely are you to refer 15.5 to a friend or a colleague? So going back to Kevin's discussion around recruiting and referrals and how qualified referrals are, that's an important thing to look at. Another thing we look at is we did a survey very recently around leadership and how we think our leadership is doing in comparison to what are our expectations of leadership. I can give you the name of the survey company we used, but I don't necessarily want to share our results here today, but it was fantastic results. We have high confidence in our leadership here at 15.5.
Cool. And then at Blueboard, we really focus on, Daniel Pink wrote this book called Drive, and he says that, hey, intrinsic motivation is a combination of three things: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And so are we enabling our employees with all the tools necessary and the learning opportunities to really dive into their work and master it? Autonomy is, are we giving them the flexibility to execute, right? We don't want to micromanage, we want to guide and lead at a high level and trust our employees to execute. And the last thing is purpose, right? Is the company have a clear vision, mission, and values that we can all align to and operate under that framework?
Cool. There's a great question that just came in, Kevin, when we might want to go through it. Basically, Elise is asking about how would you want to think about disparity and what personalization would be for individuals, knowing that we actually talk a lot about this at Blueboard. There's 5 active generations in the workplace right now, starting at Gen Z, ranging all the way up to boomers and to matures. And obviously people want really different things. We've done a lot of research here at Blueboard. We find that the younger segments, millennials, Gen Z, for example, are really into adventure. They're into social currency. So what's going to get me a lot of likes on Instagram? What's going to be a great story that I can tell at my next happy hour? Versus when you get to be a little bit more senior, those generations are really looking for ways to make memories with their family, to revisit things that they already know and love. So maybe picking up a hobby again. So the great thing, at least about Blueboard, is that it's all about choice. We think about curation of hundreds of different experiences for employees to choose from, whether it is something family-oriented or going skydiving first time or taking music lessons. So it's really something for everybody, and the company doesn't have that burden of having to know what everybody's individual needs are. It's really about giving them a platform that can easily scale and then letting the employee choose something that's most meaningful to them. There was a question really quickly just to clarify a little bit about what 15.5 does. Holly, I don't know if you want to do it, just a quick overview of some of the features or the ways that people use 15.5 in their workplace.
Yeah, so 15.5, we actually got the name from kind of how we want employees and managers to use the product. It's very lightweight. So 15 minutes for an employee to answer a few questions about their week, weigh in on their world, what's going well for them, what's not going well for them. You can ask a few employee engagement questions, like where do you see yourself growing in 3 years or something like that. It takes their managers 5 minutes to review their employees 15.5, and that feedback sparks dialogue between the employee and the manager, as well as leadership has visibility into the weekly check-ins. That's the core of 15.5 is that we check in that dialogue between the manager and employee, but we also have other pillars of the product. So we have this pillar called high fives, which is appreciation. And it's a really powerful, simple way to just bring light and focus into what do you appreciate about an employee for their contribution. We also have OKRs. So if you're doing any kind of goal setting with objectives and key results, you can do that quarterly. And then one-on-one, so you have a one-on-one meeting agenda inside of the product. You can flag different answers, maybe it's something someone's struggling with, and start to build a one-on-one agenda and take notes. And then fourth, the piece we have is a quarterly forward-looking review cycle. It's called the best self-review. And it's really our answer to reinvent the annual performance review into a quarterly cycle, allow employees to reflect on where, what they've done in the last quarter and where they'd like to grow in the next quarter. And we feel like this is something that can really help improve an employee engagement within the company, because it's really about how people are relating to their work.
Wonderful. Carrie asked just about the difference between using points or other kind of options when thinking about reward platforms. So a question for Kevin, what is the value of going with experiences versus something with points?
Yeah, great question, Carrie. And so one of the reasons why we don't do points is because we want to focus on driving behavioral change. And the way to drive behavioral change is directly tying achievements and reward. And so when you have points, you accumulate a small number of points over multiple recognition interactions, right? And at the end, when you redeem it, you actually can't tie what behavior you did to gain and redeem this reward. With Blueboard, every achievement is tied to a recognition and a reward. So when you get Blueboard, if it's an anniversary, if it's helping roll out a new marketing campaign, you'll have an experience tied directly to that achievement, so that you know and that everyone else in your company knows that's a valued behavior for your organization.
Perfect. We actually had a quick question come through on chat also. Jacob's asking some best practices and tips for sharing experiences after they happen, which is really timely. Jacob, we actually just published a blog post on our website. I can share the link with you. But if you go to blueboard.com/blog, there's a blog post called Tips for Creating a Buzzworthy Recognition Program. And we actually share some best practices from our customers. Some of those include one customer, Glaukos. They're based in Southern California. They're a public biotech company. They actually have created a dedicated Instagram, which is awesome. And if you guys are familiar with the Flat Stanley adventures from the 90s, I believe, it was this notion of taking a cutout figure and traveling around the world, taking photos, and then sharing those with the community. So Glaukos has done the same thing, but only with their CEO, Tom. So we created Flat Tom for Glaukos. All employees are eligible to participate, but especially those who have received Blueboard awards. So they take photos with Flat Tom, they share them back, and that feeds into their social media stream. And they also have a really exciting contest for people who aren't eligible yet for anniversaries, where the best photo with Flat Tom does win a pretty amazing Blueboard award each year. So that's one way. Another example, our customer Maximum Games and a few others have dedicated Slack channels. So maybe a Blueboarding channel or another one themed around a hashtag that's relevant for your recognition efforts. So having that be a place, whether it's Slack or another existing intranet or chat tool that your company uses, building it into your existing workflow, but creating a hub for ways that people can share photos and videos, ultimately making it comfortable and exciting for employees to celebrate each other as they're having those recognition moments. Kevin, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Sure.
Perfect. Okay. And then next up, we have a question from Josh that's asking to speak to just implementation and adoption for new clients, any best practices. I know for Blueboard, we were just talking about social sharing. That's a really great tip for new clients that join us. And I'm really happy that Jacob brought that up, because it's definitely a best practice when we're thinking about building adoption and excitement. The good thing about experiences is that they are very shareable, so that naturally plays into implementation and adoption. Holly, or do you want to add anything for Blueboard?
I think the second piece, sharing is kind of the feedback loop that organically drives marketing for a program. Initially, it's very important to have a public rollout. Experiences, like Morgan said, are really shareable. The best brands all market around experiences. And so customers, organizations have that opportunity to market in a very similar way. And so one thing we did in the past for a large technology company was we actually recognized the EA to the CEO who'd been working on a 6-month-long project. He went on an experience talked about what he had done to achieve recognition, and then actually showed the video of him going out. And so at a company-wide all hands, the CEO shared the video and then talked about, hey, in the new year, we're going to be rolling out a program to really recognize your achievement and your contributions.
Cool. Holly, how about for you guys? What are some best practices for new customers when they join 15.5?
Yeah, it's definitely going to start at the top. You know, culture and engagement, your performance management strategy really needs to be embraced by everyone, in particular the leadership team. So getting leadership buy-in is the first place. We'll usually start with rolling it out to the executive team, getting their input, understanding what are the different challenges between an engineering team or a marketing team in your organization. The next step there is then we'll usually roll it out to the managers, and really we'll guide you through this. We'll have a customer success manager that can do that and guide you through this process. But then from the manager's perspective, it's really about what is the value 15.5 can bring to me, help give me the tools to have a one-on-one with our employees, save time, and really get a good understanding of how my employees are feeling. And then for employees, you know, talking to them as the final step is talking about here's how 15.5 works. We want you to spend no more than 15 minutes. We want you to provide honest feedback and use this as a platform to initiate conversation between you and your manager.
Perfect. We'll give just one more second or two if anyone has any final questions. I think otherwise we've gotten through everything. Thank you guys for the great feedback. One of the questions that we did answer over text was just around if the presentation would be recorded. We will absolutely be sending out, probably just later this afternoon, a video recording of the presentation in case you had to drop off early, as well as the links to each of the calculators that we walked through. Our information is listed here as well. Feel free to jot down our info if you have any questions specifically for the speakers, myself, Holly, or Kevin. Otherwise, on that note, it looks like we're wrapping up, and thank you so much for joining. We'll see you next time.